Number 5. Ivan Van Sertima. Ivan Van Sertima was an author, historian, professor, and broadcaster born on January 26, 1935 in Kitty Village, Guyana. His work transformed the way people viewed and taught African history. He is best known for his book, They Came Before Columbus, which introduced his argument that people of African origin came to Central and South America long before Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492. His other lifetime achievements include receiving his master's degree and becoming an associate professor of African Studies at Rutgers University, founding the Journal of African Civilizations, publishing several books discussing African contributions to civilization and humanity, joining UNESCO's International Commission for Rewriting the Scientific and Cultural History of Mankind, and mentoring historians such as Runoko Rashidi. Van Sertima passed away on May 25, 2009 in Highland Park, New Jersey at the age of 74. Number 4. W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois was a Harvard University-trained educator, historian, essayist, journalist, sociologist, socialist, and activist born on February 23, 1862 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He grew up in an integrated community that was considered relatively tolerant. Du Bois is considered one of the greatest intellectuals of the Pan-African community. He is best known for being one of the founders of the Niagara Movement, which helped give birth to the NAACP. Being a professor at Atlanta University, his scathing criticism of white racism, and being the editor of the proposed Africana Encyclopedia. Du Bois died in Accra, Ghana, August 27, 1963, at the age of 93. He died on the eve of the March on Washington, the largest civil rights demonstration in the U.S. to that date. Number 3. John Henrik Clarke. John Henrik Clarke was a teacher, historian, black nationalist, and Pan-Africanist born in Union Springs, Alabama on New Year's Day, 1915. He was born into a poor Southern family but moved north in 1933 for a new beginning like many other black people in America had during that time. He is remembered as a pioneer in the formation of Africana studies in the United States, being one of the most respected historians in the Pan-African community, being the founder of the African Heritage Studies Association, creating the Black and Puerto Rican Studies Department at Hunter College in New York City, and releasing multiple books that highlighted people of African descent's contributions to history and overall significance. His work made the effort to restore the global image of black people that had been tarnished by the Eurocentric mainstream. He died in New York City on July 16, 1998, at the age of 83. Number 2. Chancellor J. Williams. Chancellor J. Williams was an author, teacher, historian, and sociologist born in Bennettsville, South Carolina on December 22, 1893, to a father that was a former slave and a mother that was a cook, nurse, and evangelist. Williams is best known for his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 4500 BC to 2000 AD, in which he attempted to repair the reputation of sub-Saharan Africans prior to the conquest of Europeans by pointing out the achievements of African people and the bias of white academics who would distort knowledge of their great past. Throughout his life, Williams had many achievements, including earning both his bachelor's degree in education and master's degree in history at Howard University, where he would also begin teaching in 1946. He also completed his PhD in sociology at American University in 1949 and did research at Oxford University, the University of London, the University of Chicago, the University of Iowa, and in 1956, University College in Ghana. Chancellor James Williams died in Washington, D.C. on December 7th, 1992 at the age of 93. Number 1. Chaquanta Diop. Chaquanta Diop was a historian, author, anthropologist, physicist, and Pan-Africanist political leader born in Deir Bell, Senegal on December 23, 1933. He is best known as one of the greatest historians in the African world and discovering evidence that proves human civilization is rooted in Africa. Diop was born into a peasant class family, but despite his conditions, completed his bachelor's degree in Senegal, got his doctorate from the Sorbonne in Paris, was appointed as a research fellow and professor of ancient history at Dakar University, and published multiple books. Today, he is often remembered as the man that proved Egypt was black. Chaquanta Diop died on February 1st, 1986 in Dakar at the age of 63.
Greatest Pan-Africanists of all time, and their impacts on the African revolutionary movement. 7. Julius Nyerere. Tanzania's first president, Nyerere championed African socialism and emphasized self-reliance. He actively supported liberation movements across the continent and advocated for unity among African nations. 6. Aimé Césaire. A Martinican poet, playwright, and politician, Césaire advocated for the recognition of African cultural identity and the rejection of colonialism. His work influenced the Negritude movement and Pan-African thought. 5. Toussaint Louverture. A Haitian revolutionary leader, Toussaint played a crucial role in Haiti's fight for independence from French colonial rule. His commitment to freedom and self-determination inspired Pan-Africanists worldwide. 4. Patrice Lumumba. The first democratically elected Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, formerly known as Zaire. Lumumba fought for independence and Pan-African unity, but his life was tragically cut short. 3. Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican-born leader who founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA. Garvey's rallying cry was, "Africa for the Africans." He promoted black pride, economic empowerment, and the repatriation of black people to Africa. 2. Kwame Nkrumah. Ghana's first president, Nkrumah was a prominent Pan-Africanist. He believed that unity among Africans would end colonialism, and his leadership contributed to Ghana's independence. 1. W.E.B. Du Bois. A pioneering scholar, Du Bois consistently advocated for the study of African history and culture. His statement that, "the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line," resonated with Pan-Africanist sentiments. These individuals played crucial roles in shaping Pan-Africanist thought and promoting unity among people of African descent. Their legacies continue to inspire generations.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was the keynote speaker for what was called African Festival during so-called Black History Month. I say so-called Black History Month because whites in America have given us 1 month out of the year to celebrate and observe Black history, which is an infinite history. We are the original man and the original woman of the universe, of the planet Earth. And we have an infinite history that cannot be crammed into the shortest month of the year and the coldest month of the year. But we invited the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan onto our campus. And I was studying for the Christian ministry at that time. And he transformed my life, impacted on my life. I was beginning to break with that commitment toward the ministry because I believed, of course, that the white Christian slave traders were very instrumental, of course, in breaking the backs of black people, in a sense, and completely robbing us of a knowledge of self in what we know to be the African or the Black Holocaust. And so I was beginning to move away from that. When the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came to speak on our campus, I had never heard a man speak the way I heard this man speak, and I had never heard a man touch to the very heart and core of things. He showed us how to find ourselves in the Bible and in the Holy Quran. He showed us the liberation struggle of black people in the Bible and in the Quran. And he showed us that there were prophecies that had prophesied that we would be in this condition for 400 years in a strange land among a strange people, and that God would come and raise up one in our midst, and that one, as a great divine liberator and emancipator, would begin to prepare us for our divine rendezvous with destiny as again a free, proud, and productive people, the descendants of the people who gave civilization to the earth, and law and medicine and science and government and morality and religion. But those were my early beginnings in Islam. And I became, my slave name was Harold. Good British name.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I later became known as Harold X. And as Harold X, I rose up through the ranks of the Nation of Islam. I had worked with the Black Panther Party and the NCCF, the National Committee to Combat Fascism. I had worked with the Cultural Nationalist Movement and had done some work with the Dr. Martin Luther King Civil Rights movement that was sweeping the country, as we all did in our local areas to some degree.
Oh, sorry, was this in Louisiana?
I was born in Houston, Texas. So I worked in Texas, I worked in Louisiana, I worked in Mississippi, and I also worked in Georgia and Alabama, just moving as a student would do it, and one who's just coming into or beginning to come into a knowledge of self, and dissatisfied and angry over the wretched and terrible and poor condition of our people. During this period, as Harold X rose up through the ranks of the Nation of Islam, I sold at one point 1,000 Muhammad Speaks newspapers a week. And that's what took me throughout the South. We'd leave on weekends and just go from state to state. I was a top Muhammad Speaks newspaper salesman. I rose up through the ranks to be section leader, squad leader, lieutenant, first officer, rose up ultimately to become captain, student minister, assistant minister, and all the way on up ultimately to be the third in that great line of history. The first great national spokesman of the black movement was Minister Malcolm X. And the second was chosen by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was Minister Louis Farrakhan. And Minister Louis Farrakhan chose me as his national spokesman, the third in that line behind Malcolm and behind himself. As national spokesman of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at that time, and prior to that, the supreme captain of the elite and well-trained and disciplined FOI, or Fruit of Islam, and later to become the national assistant, the immediate assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, similar to Vice President, and was quite honored that he had this kind of love and confidence in me. So I have held every position in the Nation of Islam for the most part. I've been a secretary, I've been regional minister, and have ministered out of all of the major regional points. Los Angeles, on the West Coast. I was again in that great line of history Malcolm X, Minister Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Brother Omawale, was minister of the world-famous Mosque Number 7 in Harlem, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan became minister of Mosque Number 7 in Harlem, and ultimately chose me, again after himself and after Malcolm, to be minister of Mosque Number 7 in Harlem, New York. So that's basically background and a history of early beginnings and to some degree up to today with the Nation of Islam.
Okay. Can we, obviously things have moved on quite significantly since that. So can I ask you, Dr. Muhammad, I know you mentioned it yesterday, but just for the record, yesterday the members of the nation were conspicuous by their absence at yesterday's meeting. I wonder why you thought that was.
I don't know why they were absent. This question could best be answered, as I said last night, by asking them. I would have loved for them to be there. We had a few sisters in the audience who seemed to really enjoy the lecture and were very enthusiastic and came up and hugged me after the lecture. We had one or two brothers who were outside who helped with the parking of the cars, but said that they were told that they could not attend the meeting and could not come inside. I, as you well know, made a speech that was heard around the world on November 29, 1993 in Union, New Jersey at Keene College. The students gave me the subject, the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. And it is a secret relationship because it has come to light. The role of the Pope and the Catholic Church, it has come to light what role the white man of England, what role the twin cities of Bristol and Liverpool, what role these slave caves and slave ports played in our genocide and in our black Holocaust that ultimately led to the loss of over 600 million black lives, and a part of those millions lost directly in the Middle Passage, just coming over between Africa and America, and the bones, the bleached bones, I'm sure, and our blood running and flowing in the oceans surrounding these white nations, I'm sure could be seen for many, many years as the cargo moved back and forth. The Arabs have played a great role in the slave trade, but it has been the so-called Jew. I call him a so-called Jew because he's not the true Jew, the true Hebrew, the true Jew, the true chosen people of God, represented by the original black man and black woman, the diaspora African who can be found in the hills of North America, and many found right here in the so-called UK and throughout Europe and the Caribbean. We are the chosen people of God who fulfill the Bible prophecies and scriptures. But a Johnny-come-lately people who just crawled out of the caves and hills of Europe, and Ashkenazi so-called Jew, imposters who are perpetrating a fraud before the world, have attempted to fit themselves into the scriptures and the prophecy and to steal our birthright. And I spoke very hard against them that day at Keene College because there was a group of them outside of the university auditorium chanting, "Death to Farrakhan, death to Farrakhan. Who do we want? Farrakhan. How do we want him? We want him dead." And as they would, this chant was going on in different sections throughout the country. In fact, we had run a group of so-called Jews of the Jewish Defense League, the JDL, away from the Los Angeles Convention Center. I organized some men, and we went out and confronted them in the streets and actually spanked them and drove them away from the convention center. We were there, we weren't bothering anyone. We were there with thousands of our own people, close to 15, 20,000 of our own people. We don't go to any of their meetings and disrupt their meetings. And we don't paint swastikas on their synagogues or desecrate the graves of their people, even though we could paint the swastika. It's our symbol. We didn't call it a swastika, but it's an Adinkra symbol from West Africa. And it comes from our culture. And it has now, a spin has been put on it, a twist. It has been perverted, as the white man perverts everything. It has been perverted. So it is our symbol that has been taken from us and misused. But we, knowing the offensive nature, we have not sought to do that in interfering with these people, but for them to come to our meetings and to be disruptive and disrespectful. We went out and actually drove them, ran them down the streets in front of the convention center. But that day at Keene College, I was speaking. And that night at the convention center, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was speaking, so I was free to go outside as the former Supreme Captain of the Fruit of Islam, and with the respect of the men, organized a serious posse and went out to take care of that business. But at Keene College, I was speaking. So I waged war with the microphone. I waged war from the rostrum, from the podium. And I took no prisoners. In the hip-hop culture, in the rap culture, in America, they call me the truth terrorist, the knowledge gangster, the black history hitman, the lie killer urban guerrilla, the revolutionary roughneck. So, based on these names and titles and this reputation, I'm sure to some degree there must be some truth to it, at least. We could not tolerate this. If you call for the death of my spiritual father and my leader and teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then you have to expect some consequences, some severe, some serious consequences. I'm not especially a violent man, but I'm not especially a nonviolent man. I believe in peace when possible, or peace if possible. Peace if possible, but violence when necessary. I believe that you should rise to the occasion. That it's important to understand the iron hand and the velvet glove, to be strong in the way sometimes, but gentle in the manner, to know when to be tender and gentle, but also to know when to actually light a fire under your enemy and adversary when it is necessary. That day, you have probably heard that the statements that went out before the world, that I evaluated our condition in South Africa. This is leading up to the elections in South Africa, and the election of Nelson Mandela. And I said that I don't agree with a multiracial government in South Africa. I don't believe in one man, one vote. I don't believe the white man has any vote in South Africa. After he has murdered millions throughout the African continent and in South Africa, and here in the UK, in the Caribbean, in the hills of North America, millions of our men, black men, women, children, and black babies. He deserves no vote. When the so-called Jews ultimately were able to organize among themselves against the crimes and atrocities of the other devil, like themselves, Adolf Hitler, they set up, and the Nazis, they set up what was called the Nuremberg trials. And in the Nuremberg trials, they tried Germans as war criminals for war crimes. They didn't wholesale forgive everybody. This is madness. But for Nelson Mandela to have no trial, there are no war criminals. There are no war crimes. We just blanketly forgive everyone. No intelligent nation, no intelligent people on the face of the planet Earth can understand why we have not had our quote-unquote Nuremberg trials or our trials of the war criminals who have committed and perpetrated these heinous and most terrible crimes against us. In fact, the most terrible that have ever been recorded in the annals of time and history. So I said I didn't agree with a man spending 27 years in prison, and then he comes out and becomes the president, unless there's a script behind the scenes, and somebody had a master white plan, and the strings are being pulled by a hidden white hand. And I went on to say that Nelson Mandela was considered a revolutionary as long as he was locked up. And white people were afraid that South Africa was about to erupt, go up in flames. And so they devised a plan to buy some time. Mandela became the symbolic president, and now he's buck dancing and skinning, grinning and scratching, has turned into a Tom and a sellout in South Africa, just a coconut in South Africa, or what we call in America an Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside, coconut, brown on the outside, white on the inside. He has abandoned Sister Winnie, who is a true revolutionary, and whom we have great love and respect for, who was putting those neckties around the enemies and the stool pigeons and rats and agent provocateurs and snitches' necks and lighting them with gasoline in them and setting them on fire and executing them, actually. I said in South Africa that we should give the white man a period of time to get out of South Africa. Be merciful. Don't just kill them all. Give them a period of time to leave.
By sundown, I think
I'll get to the timetable in a minute. And the British should go back to Britain, or the English back to England, and the French back to France, and the Oppenheimers, the De Beers, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and others, and how Barclay and Lloyds of London and these other international gangsters and rogues have waxed rich from slave labor and raping and robbing Africa of its human and natural and material resources. I said we should send that, the American white men back home, all of them, the Dutch, the Boers, back where they came from. Give them 24 hours to get out of town by sundown. I said if they didn't get out of town, we kill everything white that ain't right that's in sight. We kill the men, we kill the women, we kill the children, we kill the babies. I went on to say, well, why would we kill the women? Kill the women because they're the military manufacturing center. And every 9 months, they lay down on their backs and reinforcements roll out from between their legs. Shut down the military manufacturing center that provides soldiers for the army and oppressors of our people. Then why kill the babies? I said kill the white babies in South Africa because one day they're going to grow up to oppress our babies. This is a thing that moves from generation to generation. And they have killed our men, our women, our children, our elders, and our babies. So what is good for them is certainly good for us, because it is a position of self-defense. They had no business coming into South Africa. It was an act of unprovoked war on an African nation, on a black nation. I said we kill them all. Kill the faggots. Kill the lesbians. Kill if they're blind, crippled, crazy, go all. Don't spare none of them. I went on to say that after we kill them all, go to the goddamn graveyard and dig up the goddamn grave and kill them a goddamn again. Because they didn't die hard enough with all of the crimes that they have perpetrated against our people and still perpetrate against us to this very damn day. I said, if you don't have the energy to dig them up, then just go and shoot in the goddamn grave and kill them a damn again. Kill them again and again and over again until we are our souls are satisfied, until we are healed, until it is therapy for us. I said that there is healing in the killing, that there is medicine in their murder because of what they have done to us. They don't deserve a vote. There's no one in their right mind who would say and agree that if someone comes to your home and bum rushes your home and black boot stomps your door down or breaks into your home, an invader, an intruder, breaks in and rapes everyone in the household, robs the household, then enslaves everybody, colonizes everybody in the household, takes all of your wealth and parlays it into an empire for themselves. Nobody in their right mind, no one in their right mind would now, after you gain power, to get your home back, to get your house back from this invader, this intruder, this criminal, this robber, this burglar, this murderer. Now they've killed your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your grandfather, your uncle, your aunt, your cousin, this one, that one, and all of a sudden you're going to forgive them and say, well, now that I have my home back, we'll be fair. We'll just share the bloody house, and you, mate, or old chap, you get a vote whenever there's a decision to be made, and I'll vote whenever there's a decision to be made, and we'll just be fair about this thing, and we'll let bygones be bygones. Only a fool would let an invader, an intruder, a criminal come into their home under those conditions, and then turn around and share the house with them the way we're doing in South Africa. This is ridiculous. So for Mandela not to hold any Nuremberg trials, quote unquote, we would call ours whatever we would call ours, and for him to just forgive and forget means to me that we have not matured as a people. And I expressed that the Catholic Church and the Pope had a strong hand in the slave trade. It's a secret relationship because the Jews have hidden their hands, the so-called Jews. They lie to the world. They pretend they are the victims. And that's why it is called a secret relationship. I went further to say that we should raise up the Pope's dress and see what's hidden under that dress. Well, I wasn't dealing with a matter of sexuality. We all know the homosexuality of the Catholic Church. That's no secret. But that's not what I was speaking about. It was a metaphor. I was talking about lifting up the skirts of the garment to show the shame of the Pope, show the shame of the Catholic Church, and how in the name of God, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, they murdered black men, women, children, and babies and took divine human beings, the very people of God's choice, and put us in shackles and chains and slave ships and made us build a white world of oppression against ourselves for them. They went on to point out in the media that I said that the so-called Jews were the bloodsuckers of the black nation. And I went on to point out how they sucked the blood of the black nation. There were many, many points. I said the Jews control the Federal Reserve System in America, the banking system. They control radio, television, newspapers, and many of the publishing houses. They control the college and university and entrance examinations and have a strong hand in the so-called academic system. And now they have a bell curve or some other foolishness where they say black people are inferior to whites. Can you imagine robbing a people of their names, their language, their religion, their culture, their God, their folkways, their mores, their norms, and robbing us of the very power of our own being, and then turn around and give me a test? After you rob me completely of a knowledge of self, then you give me an examination and say, you see there, you guys don't score as high as we do. Or you're going to have a race and you break both of my legs and then you shoot the starter's pistol and you wonder why you don't really wonder, but you want the world to wonder why you finished first when you broke my leg and then called a race. These were points, and I went on to defend my teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at King College, the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States. The United States Senate in a special session voted 97-0 against me, and they had, in the 80s, voted against my teacher in the Senate. And for the first time in the history of the world, the full Congress of the United Snakes of America, the House of Representatives in a special session passed House Resolution 343, condemning me. The first time it had condemned a private party within the United States of America. The Anti-Defamation League, which is an international spy organization, the ADL, the B'nai B'rith, the Jewish Defense League, Jewish Defense Organization, many other Jew organizations, many of the Negro, not black, not African, but many of the Negro civil rights organizations spoke out against me. Jesse Jackson, Kwesi Mfume, Ben Chavis, and many others came out during this time. After this speech, it took a turn. Ultimately, my spiritual father suspended me from National Assistant Minister and Representative, but did not suspend me from the organization. I was still, quote-unquote, a member of the Nation of Islam in good standing with all rights and privileges, and I am still a member of the Nation of Islam, quote-unquote, with all rights and privileges, though it seems to get a little cloudy and confused now. There are those who say that the nation is changing direction. I am not sure of that, but some believe that this is the source of whatever trouble that is brewing at this point. I cannot answer those questions. Those are questions that I will have to ask behind closed doors of my spiritual father, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, so that we all can have greater and better clarity.
Thank you. I'm sorry, brother, can I come to an actual end? One more last question. Okay, one question.
Basically, there's a lot of people who agree with the statements that you make about the nature of our relationship with white people and Jews. But sometimes some people object to your language. I mean, how would you respond to that question?
I believe
some of the statements that King College, Loxley,
I believe with all of my heart that the white man is the devil. I believe I can prove it in Bible, prophecy, Scripture, the Torah, Old Testament, New Testament, the Quran. I believe I can go to West Africa to the Ifa Odu text and find it in Yoruba. I believe I can find it among the Dogons, the Twa. I believe I can study and go into the sacred texts of ancient Kemet, or so-called Egypt, and find proof of this. And just from the history of the white man, his bloody history that is written in blood, and in the volumes of books in his own libraries, I believe that the proof is there, conclusive proof, and none of us can deny the undeniable and indisputable and irrefutable proof that is stacked against him, again, since his history is written in blood. I'm one of the Holocaust survivors, one of the Holocaust victims, but I'm a freedom fighter. I'm a revolutionary, and I consider myself a righteous man of God. And when you are a victim of constant and day-to-day, to this very date, genocide and oppression and white supremacy and rabid racism and violence on every level, then it means that you fight in every way that you can by any means necessary. It is my job as a revolutionary. It is my job, it is my duty as a revolutionary and a freedom fighter to wage war with the enemy, to irritate the enemy, to agitate the enemy. What do you mean call names? I want to kill him. Are you worried about the language that I use? If I called him a hook-nosed, bagel-eating, lox-eating, perpetrating a fraud, as you just referred to that Johnny-come-lately, just crawled out of the caves and hills of Europe, wanna-be Jew. That's because as we started this interview off, I said he's not the true Jew. We're the chosen people of God, but he's perpetrated this lie before the world. So they're murdering our people and have murdered over 600 million of us. So for me to call them the devil, the beast, the cracker, the hunky, this is mild. That doesn't even compare. It pales into insignificance when we look at the fact that they have told us that we are ignorant and unintelligent and inferior to them by nature, that we will always be their slaves and their servants by nature, that we've made no contribution to the world when everything that they have is based on the civilization that we have given to them. So this kind of violence on their part forces me to again believe in peace if possible, but violence when necessary.
Can you tell us how that came about, your working with Ice Cube and his embracing of the nation with their founder?
Certainly. Well, my first experience with the hip-hop culture was, of course, with Chuck D, at that time Professor Griff, primarily Professor Griff was the entree. Professor Griff, Chuck D, Flavor Flav, Terminator X, and various members of the S1Ws of Public Enemy, who had me on their soundtrack video for Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Fight to Power. I was on the soundtrack and on the video. And on Night of the Living Basshead, the voice that you heard after Flavor Flav did She Watched Channel Zero, was the voice that you heard that said, have you forgot that when we were brought here, we were robbed of our name, robbed of our language. We lost our religion, our culture, our God, and many of us, by the way we act, we even lost our mind. And Chuck D come, there he is. Don't care. Then with Brother Ice Cube, we had been trying to meet each other, but as God and the ancestors would have it, he started getting my tapes, as my tapes are beginning to circulate quite a bit. And he got a copy of my tape, The Goddamn White Man. I made this lecture in Los Angeles. I was meeting with a group of Crips and Bloods from the street gang organizations at that time who have begun now to form ways toward unity, and beginning to take off the blue and the red and wear black. And as I have said to them many times, understand that our common enemy doesn't wear just blue or red, but our common enemy wears white, even when he's butt naked. And I was meeting with this group of Crips, big group of Crips in Compton, and Bloods were there because we had brought them into the territory, those who weren't supposed to be there and the like, and we were ready to speak. So they had given me this big introduction and this big build-up, and I came up with my white shirt on and my bow tie, and I'm thinking that, you know, the Crips and the Bloods were saying, yo, man, you know, who is this, you know? And I really wasn't sure what I was going to say to them, and when I got to the rostrum, when I touched the microphone, you know, it just hit me. I said, my subject today is the goddamn white man. And the Crips and the Bloods, they said, yeah, they started high-fiving, yeah, my man. I said, that's right, my subject is the goddamn white man. So I started breaking down the term that God is the divine, supreme being, the creator, the infinite intelligence, the great power and force, creative and regenerative power and force of the universe. I went through all of this. And damn means to be condemned. It means to be sentenced and I went through all of this and showing how the white man was not just the white man, but he's the God-damned white man. That God had damned him, condemned his world, and his world was ultimately to reach its demise and fall. So the Crips, they were just, and the Bloods, they were just in their seat. So I made this lecture again in New York, in Harlem, goddamn white man. Ice Cube, Brother O'Shea, got a copy of the video of the goddamn white man. Now, Chuck D and Professor Griff and Flav had said on their trips they watched my videos, and that helped their consciousness and helped them with their liberation lyrics. And they said that's not a trip. Well, they didn't listen to my tapes, long hours. And Cube started doing the same thing. So one of the brothers, Brother Ron X and Captain Shaheed, made an introduction. And we met and talked. And so I started to meeting with him quite frequently. And he later said, if you've seen the video or heard the tape that I made in Compton called By Any Means Necessary, where Ice Cube introduces me on that occasion. And he said, this is the man who woke me up and opened my eyes and taught me what time it is and taught me what my daddy didn't teach me. We developed that kind of close relationship. So where Public Enemy referenced me or sampled me from my speeches, they would do Minister Malcolm X, Minister Farrakhan excerpts from some of my lectures. But Cube and I would go into the studio together. So when it came time to do death certificate, then I wrote death for death certificate and actually wrote death and rebirth on side 1 and side 2. Of course, it went platinum plus, and after death certificate was lethal injection, which went platinum plus. I did White Cave Bitch on platinum, on the platinum plus lethal injection. However, word, give me a black goddess sister, I can't resist her. No stringy haired, blonde haired, blue eyed, pale skin, buttermilk complexion, recessive, depressive, something. Straight down. 6 o'clock, no frills, ironing board backside. Something, mutinoid caucus, subject to have the itch. White cave bitch. He had heard my tape, The White Woman is a Bitch, a two-legged dog, which I did because of the Central Park joggers case where they had locked up these young brothers and charged them with raping a white woman who claimed that she had no recollection nor memory of her assailants. She couldn't identify them in court. They, of course, did a forensics test, and in the DNA testing, they found that the semen or the sperm that was taken from her matched that of her boyfriend, but it matched none of the suspects. But ultimately, they were railroaded off to prison, young brothers in their teens, and they lifted her up and made her such a pure white woman, such a good white woman. And they played her up in the media so much until I attacked the image that they were using of her. Because I say that many times the white man will use the white woman, that she's a major weapon in his arsenal. So it's important sometimes to hit that major weapon and knock it out as a freedom fighter in order to give an advantage to our people. So that was when I made the tape that led to ultimately White Cave Bitch. So Ice Cube said that he loved what he was hearing from my spiritual father, the Honorable and leader, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But there was something about the way I spoke the language that touched him and helped him to see the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in a brighter light and in a greater light, the way Minister Malcolm X and Minister Farrakhan could always represent the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in a brighter light and cause others to come to him. So he said, I'm going to lead the people to Minister Khalid Muhammad because I know that he will point them to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That's how the relationship started. Then I was on the video True to the Game. The True to the Game video, this dealt with all the sellouts and handkerchief heads and white woman chasers. And you see Cube, throw it out on him with his gat and tie him up and put him in the trunk. And he's dropping him off somewhere. And at the end of True to the Game, you see me as the teacher, who's they all tied up, tape, they can't do anything but listen, and the teacher is teaching them a knowledge of self. And on the recent video of Ice Cube and Scarface, out of Houston, Texas, that's where I grew up, and Scarface is there in Houston. They just did the recent video where they say, I'm down, I put my gat in your mouth and make you vomit. I'm down with Khalid Abdul Muhammad, something about if he wants a brother and not a other, I'm with him or something. Then Shaquille O'Neal and Def Jeff, Shack Attacker, one of them referenced me, dropping bombs like Khalid Muhammad. And the new group that's rocking and shaking them up, Refugees, Fuji. Sister Lauren references me, and I got Inner Vision like Stevie Wonder, something else. And D like Khalid Muhammad, the MCs make me vomit. I come controversial, freaky with no rehearsal, contraire, mon frère.